Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Scratch My Noodle. I'm your host, Jeff Macolino, and I am very pleased to be joined today by Megan Gunsorek. How are you today, Megan?
I'm great. Wonderful, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's get started with can you tell my audience what you do and also,
Yeah.
maybe start out with where they can find you? We'll get plugs in the beginning this way.
Well, sure. The morphicfield.com is my website, and I am a family constellations facilitator. So I help people clear their path down ancestral trauma that they're carrying and experiencing today as some sort of issue that they just can't seem to get rid of. So that means it could be anxiety, depression, it could be addiction, it could be a repeating pattern that just keeps showing up in their life. So why do I keep finding myself in these same type of relationships, the same struggle with finances, with job, with relationship with myself? Why do I keep finding myself back here? And so maybe we've done the therapy and we've done the self-help and maybe it's helped a bit, but we keep going back to that same spot and that same experience. Well, it may not have started with us. We may be carrying an unresolved, unhealed event, trauma, circumstance, energy of what happened in the past. We are connected to our ancestors, they live within us. And so we carry their resources, we carry their love, their strengths, and we also carry their pain and their trauma. And oftentimes, generations back, they just didn't have the tools. Trauma was not a word of the day. So they didn't deal with it. You know, there was a lot of death back then, a lot of illness, sickness, war, and they're human and they have that pain. And so what happens when they lived life not dealing with that pain and they died? Well, where does that pain and that trauma, that energy go? It gets carried as a memory through the generations until somebody somebody deals with it. So somebody says, all right, what's going on here? Because we're carrying it. We're carrying the burdens, we're carrying these the ghosts of the past, whether or not we want to. And so the clues are, all right, well, when I've when I can't seem to, when it's so heavy, when it's like, well, yeah, I've got some trauma in my life, but you know, this is beyond me. Well, there's something going on back there that we're carrying, that we're entangled with. So when we're connecting with the morphic field, and the morphic field is a healing field, it's a healing modality where we're able to access this information and go, all right, what's the source, the origin of the issue today? And it can be the generational trauma. So we're able to identify and release from this entanglement, which means that we can support our ancestors to heal, to process, to complete in their lifetime. And then we get to free ourselves from carrying this burden, this entanglement as well. So we go there first. We go look at what came first that we're carrying. And then there's also during our own trauma, we can experience split parts of the self. So parts of us can actually split off at certain ages from the trauma and kind of linger there and remain there. And so that's why sometimes we'll actually find ourselves, wow, I feel like I'm 4 years old right now. Well, those parts are in that space of stuckness. And so when we experience a re traumatizing circumstance, that part can come over us and we're just not aware. We don't have that conscious relationship to those parts. Again, those parts are cast away. We oftentimes like literally cast them away because we can't deal with them. They're overwhelming, they're too sad. And so through the morphic field, we're able to find these parts and bring these parts back home, integrate with these parts, build a relationship with these parts. So that's internal parts work. So ultimately, when we're working with the morphic field, family constellation work, and internal parts work, we are freeing ourselves from entanglements with what's not ours. We're healing our family system. We are reconnecting with the parts of us that are me so that, well, I want to have an enjoyable life. I want to I want to be here really present and really understand as much as my human brain can why I'm here. I want to enjoy my life and I want to fulfill if there is a mission and purpose here, I want to fulfill it.
So there's a lot to unpack here. So so we'll see which way my brain goes. Uh, it hasn't fully decided, but um, so the I guess we'll start with some basic stuff just to so I could get a better sense of um. So the ancestral trauma, it's not really in the way you view it is not like a past life regression would. It's more, this is an ancestor who is a part of you, but it was a different person. Is that correct?
When you say a past life regression would, what do you mean by that?
Um, just so a past life regressionist, they did I did one time, and you visualize prior lives, almost like a reincarnation kind of thing, with the caveat, of course, that they say that time is not linear, so you could potentially be living multiple lives in the same timeline. Um, that's a whole deeper issue that my brain can't. I mean, I can wrap my head around it enough to say it, but diving into it would make me go insane. So that's what I mean with past life. So it's not more of like we're reincarnated and envisioning ourselves, although it is still part of us, right?
So I think what would help is to explain the experience. When we access the field, the morphic field, we're literally standing in the shoes of the ancestor, of our ancestor.
Hmm.
So they are another person, and we're able to stand in their shoes. Well, how do we do that? Through this field, we literally have representation. So I work with clients through what are called tabletop constellations, and we literally write on post-it notes, and we'll bring ourselves into the field. So the field being the table in front of us. So we're designating that as the field. And when we write people, places, objects, names onto these post-it notes, we literally transmitting the energy and information through resonance onto these pieces of paper. Now, there's other ways of doing it, and I don't really have object here, but we can use crystals. We can use other objects to transfer the energy through resonance of the person, place, or thing. Okay, that's how resonance works. When we, I have a little bit of some notes here. So let's just say we're bringing our ancestors who are standing in their strength. And when we place our hand on this representation of them, we will channel you as my client in a session with me, a constellation with me, will begin to channel. You may not think you're going to. And when I say channel, I mean you're going to tune into your ancestors. I'm going to say who do you see, who do you feel, and they're going to pop in. And at first your left brain, your mind may think, what is this information? And you'll allow it to come. I'll walk you through it. And so you'll see, you'll hear messages, support, guidance, and you may also see, oh wow, I'm connected to great grandfather. I've been carrying his pain. That information is going to come through. Why is that going to come through? Because during that constellation, we set some intentions for your greatest good. You came to me and you said, Megan, I'm having this issue, I'm having this pain. And so the field always supports us towards your healing. The universe, the morphic field, the field always goes towards balance. So where we are out of balance, where our family system is out of balance, not harmonized, we will be guided to place, to put back into movement this balance. So what does that mean? That means that maybe great grandfather had some trauma pain that he didn't deal with, that he wasn't able to deal with, that you are unconsciously feeling for him, balancing the family field. And so, yes, you're standing in the shoes. So during a constellation, literally, I will ask you, I will say, stand in the shoes of great grandfather. Let's hold some space for him to heal. And I will say, I will ask you that these sentences will come through the field to speak, give great grandfather his voice now. And I may say, offer you some healing sentences. So maybe great grandfather has to say, I am in pain. You might have never gotten to say that back then. And him saying that, you viscerally feel the pain within that you've been holding for him move through your body and release. And you standing in great grandfather's shoes, viscerally feel him, that pain of his moving through his body and releasing. So that's a bit of how a constellation can work with the healing movement.
Gotcha. So now with the family members that you're channeling, I assume it could be someone you know, or, like a parent, or it could be like a great grandfather who was dead well before you were born.
Yeah.
How much do you need to know about them to step in their shoes?
This is such a really good question. So first of all, yes, we can bring in members of our family who are living. We can bring them in, and we're standing in their shoes. We're standing in there in the soul of. We're standing in, yes, the soul of, connecting to their soul. And so they don't have to be crossed over for us to bring them into our family system during a constellation. They are part, especially we do a lot of work with our parents, receiving our life from both our mother and our father. So we do a lot of work with them. And with standing in the shoes of our ancestors, when we oftentimes, where we don't know a lot about, hey, where mom's side came from, where dad's side 2 generations back, I know nothing. When I may ask, do how what was the relationship? I know nothing. Where did they come from? Where's their country of origin? I don't know. Maybe this. When we don't know is oftentimes where the trauma is, where something did happen and then nobody talked about it. Literally, it was hush hush. You cannot talk about this in the family. If somebody talks about it, brings it up. So whether there was abuse, victim perpetrator, again, somebody died, deep, deep pain, relationship problems, somebody cheated, somebody was sent away. When when it wasn't allowed to be seen in the family, acknowledged, that's when we don't know much. And so that's where to look. So when we have a constellation, I'm trained. It's part of my training and my abilities to, in your listening and my listening, when you're speaking, I'm seeing. I'm also connecting to your ancestors. So I'm seeing what's not being seen, because sometimes it's really hidden in the family system. We don't want to see it. Um, and we're gentle about it. Sometimes we have to really, when you're working with our ancestors, we have to do it one step at a time. Like, we'll just bring them in, and then we support them in their own with their own evolution, one step at a time. We're not going to push them, but we will hold space for them to step into their own healing for their greatest good.
So I think this relates to that. I'm trying to think of the best way to word it. Whether or not they're aware of, say your great grandfather was a terrible person.
Mhm.
And maybe you're loosely aware of that. Is that someone whose shoes you still want to step in, or is, I guess you could potentially step into his wife's shoes, who maybe was abused by
Yeah.
him. How does that? Uh,
Mm.
yeah, I'm just thinking of a scenario where your father, your grandfather, whatever, was a horrible person.
Yeah.
Is it beneficial to step into their shoes, or is that kind of a potentially dangerous thing?
Yeah. And there's several facets to that question. So as my client, if my client doesn't feel comfortable standing in the shoes of a relative and ancestor where there is dark, heavy, perpetrating energies, then my client doesn't have to do that. So there is a safe space for my client, and they may know, my client may know, wow, this is actually what is missing from my healing is standing in the shoes of my great grandfather so that I can support my family from being released from this perpetration, so that I can support my great grandfather for taking responsibility for his choices in that lifetime. And I can hold space for him. I can still be in my shoes and also be in great grandfather's shoes and hold space for him to look, because he hasn't been able to look before what he did to the family, what he did to others. And in order for me to be unentangled and my family and my children to be unentangled from this victim perpetrator energy that has been alive 3 generations now, maybe even before, I'm going to support my great grandfather for stepping into his strength, carrying his own fate as a result of his own choices in his lifetime. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, and I
In
and
the
I,
morphic field sort of way.
yeah, well, and I guess there's part of it too would probably come into. I know a lot of thought is that you're not born evil. Something may happens, so maybe this was the inexcusable things that this person may have done. There's still a cause for what made them that way. Again, not excusing terrible actions, but maybe being able to understand. I don't know if that plays into it or if that made sense.
Yes, Jeff, beautiful. So when this is the process of the constellation, when we stand in the shoes of our great grandfather in that way, always what happens is we great grandfather morphs in a way. Let's say he'll get really young, and I my client may feel into this as well, and I may say, notice how great grandfather's getting really young right now, and the field will show us something like great grandfather. How old? I'll ask. How old does great grandfather feel like? Feels like he's around 4 or 5. Let's see what happened. And so what we'll see is great grandfather's trauma, the trauma that happened when he was really young. Oftentimes it's with his parents, something happened, a tragedy in his family that boom caused was the initial cause of this separation from the self. And then my client's able to see the progress such that he became, unless we'll call him, we'll say perpetrator, okay? And it can, to my client, it could be like a monster, okay? But we'll be able to see, wow, and then what does my client connect to? Wow, this little 4-year-old boy, that that heart right there, that empathy of this. He was a human, and look at look at what happened, and be able to fully receive the humanness, the integrated soul being that great grandfather was, and not just pick out that negative.
Yeah, that I like that. And I'm
Mhm.
also I don't know why this struck me. I would suppose that in the morphic field it can work both directions, meaning I would imagine like if my parents were doing they would potentially be able to step into my shoes or my kids' shoes. Is that I don't know if anyone I don't know if that's a thing. I'm just thinking from like a perspective of like why is my obviously parents never want their children to turn out bad, and children can just no matter how good the parents are, the kids, but is there a way to, again, using me as an example, maybe isn't the best tool, but if I were someone who was in prison for, something terrible, and my parents wanted to try to figure out why, is
Mhm.
there kind of a backwards, I guess not backwards. Does it go both ways? Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Sure. So as a parent, as a mother or father, I can bring my child. Let's say I'm having a constellation for myself, and I'm looking at my son and what's going on with him. Where's his entanglement in the family? I can bring him into the field and see who in my parents' lineage and the mother's, the father's side is he entangled with? Because boy, that's a little extreme. When my child in jail in prison, and I'm sure there's more that led up to that. That gives me a clue that it's not just this lifetime where this trauma was created and he's in jail and prison. So let me look. And so when we're standing in his shoes, we'll be able to see, all right, who is he connecting to? When we when an ancestor is, for example, excluded from the family. So our family is a tribe, right? And we can go back to the concept of tribes, and when somebody wasn't behaving, following the tribe rules, they'll get kicked out of the tribe. This is for safety. They may even get killed if they're not for the protection of the tribe.
Right.
And so if somebody's different, if somebody is shows weakness, if somebody's different, um, that's a form of exclusion. They could get excluded. Now, let's say an ancestor, um, let's say there was abuse in the family, and they stood up against the abuse. Well, they could get kicked out of the tribe because there's this loyalty to the abuse within the tribe, within the system. So, coming from a tribal place of belonging, let's say my son, we discover that my son is reliving this pattern, this unhealed trauma of an excluded ancestor from 3 generations back who, let's say he did a perpetration, or he could have just been gifted and different from the family, but he was kicked out for doing something. And that ghost of that exclusion lingers. So again, somebody's gonna generations later, I will represent, subconsciously. They're saying I will represent that person, and so this my son in prison, we may find out that he's manifesting, he's putting into action this ghost of unhealed trauma. So there's some sort of connection. So then we can we can stand in the shoes and hold space for my son's healing. And we're operating at the soul level. We're balancing, we're releasing those energetic entanglements. Now, my son's still in prison at this very moment. Yeah. Will he receive healing on the multi-dimensional layers that we are? Yeah. Does he have work to do in this physical realm as well? Yes. Am I the mother doing the constellation, receiving an immense amount of healing? Yes. Because ultimately, this is, yes, for my son. This is constellation for me because I have some sort of entanglement too. So we may, when my client comes to me saying, my son's in prison, we're going to support her son. But ultimately, I'm supporting my client here. What's for my client's greatest good? So she's receiving 95% of that. I don't want to, if I want to give it a percentage, because that healing is infinite, goes back and forwards. Um, yes, I think I answered that many different ways.
Yeah, no, and I guess it's interesting considering that too. The I mean, the kids aspect of it is there's my brain's going a building a tree basically in my head. Like my kids, well, they have my they also have their mother's ancestral background,
Yeah,
so it could potentially, if my kids have some sort of ancestral trauma, it might be mainly from her side and not mine. Um, would that be something that I could then tap into? I'm kind of in my head, I'm thinking, well, this kind of leads to, and maybe this is part of the point, it kind of leads to at some point we're all connected. Like, depending
yeah,
on if you can connect with anyone you make a child with,
mhm,
whether or not you're married to that person or you met them one time. I mean, um, it's an interesting connectivity now that's where my brain's going. I'm not sure if
yes.
that's part of it.
Well, absolutely. You nailed it. We are we are all interconnected, all interrelated. So our family system, we can see how we're that's our first interrelation, interconnectedness. Now, when we look through the morphic field, when we tune to the morphic field, we can see even further. This is highlighted for us how we're all interconnected, all interrelated. And so, yes, our family systems, our systems of origin are our most impactful. It's our closest relationships. Now, in the case of, well, my children have another set of ancestors, yes, and they could absolutely um, be influenced by what's happening in generationally. And so if my client has, if we're working with her children through her, then yes, they're the father side will definitely impact and come through the field. Now, again, I'm supporting my client, so this is for her greatest good. We can support her child, and her child's father's family may come through if that's for my client's greatest good. And so sometimes we may not have permission to go into that side of the family if it's not supporting my client and your child. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Like
Yeah,
it may not be related to what's actually going on. And so we'll receive the information that we need.
gotcha. So it when you're doing this, and I guess probably thinking of it the wrong way because it doesn't need to be a one-time thing. It can be done over and over. But is there an element of being open to any ancestor who, comes knocking on the door to step through? Or is it more targeted of we want to look at this specific person, and then if maybe next time we'll go into someone else that might Uh, I don't know if that question made
Yeah.
sense, but
No, it makes sense. And I have clients sometimes they have one constellation with me, and that is what they need at this point in time for their healing, growth, and evolution. And I may constellate that for them a year later. I may never see them again. That's what their soul needs. We connected at that time. I have clients who see me semi regularly. Ultimately, whatever issue, so we're doing like a healing, we're doing a transformation, and then integration. There's an integration time. Okay, life happens, and then let's say a couple months pass. Okay, this is the issue now. I'm being called to transform this. So then we do, let's say that constellation, it's on the other side of the family. There's the origins there. Once we do a couple constellations, and it can be a couple, it can be seven. So when we're okay, there was a baby who wasn't honored, who there's this pain in the family because of this child's death that I'm feeling. I'm feeling I'm entangled with. Oh, there was um a tragedy, or this fractal of a tragedy where um at a certain age, members of my family, God, they experience a sickness. There's a weird fractal that keeps happening. All right, that's there. Oh, financial. Once, and I see this in my family. Okay, so once we have money, it gets taken away. Oh, what happened way back then that something really big got taken away from my ancestor? All right. So once we clear those big traumas, then we're really able to work with the self. So we're really present, releasing what's not us, bringing back the parts of the self, integrating the parts of the self. So we're experiencing wholeness, completion, presence, really clear on our path here, really aware of why we're here. So that's different for everyone, and that some people, they're not here to experience all of that. Some people are. So I have clients that work with me. They've been working with me for several years, every month, and I'm kind of like a spiritual guide for them, spiritual coach. So every time, this work is cumulative. So every session, it's like, what do you want to look at in the field today? And days they may say, I this issue's coming up. But the more work they do, it is, Megan, I'm being called to grow here. Right. I see, let's see what the field has to offer. What's my next layer here? What's my next expansion? So it doesn't become trauma based anymore. It's, let's go to the next expansion. What am I being called to do? So the more
mm,
work you do, it evolves into that. Now, you asked about ancestors. So yes, at times we'll be working with particular specific ancestors when, during the constellation, instead of burdening, and this is what we say with transformational work when working with the field, what was burdening you becomes what resources you. So your ancestors may have been hindering you, they will now resource you. So we will hold space for them to stand behind you, standing in their own strength, carrying their own faith, supporting you from behind. You will viscerally feel them supporting you from behind. Now, we will at times work with them specifically, and we may ask grandmother, who we know is a support, to stand by your side. And at times, we just may ask your ancestors to, if you're not fielding them, stand behind you, support you in your strength and their strength, so that you can be in yours. So there are no rules with the morphic field. It's all what what can support you.
gotcha, gotcha. Which is good because it seems like that leads to it's a wide open field of you know it can be a very case by case, person by person situation as opposed to one size fits all.
Yeah.
and different reasons for people even wanting to do it, whether it's healing or like you said, just finding what's my purpose.
Yeah.
Um,
And I gotta say, Jeff, and I want to add this, we judge ourselves a lot. And, sometimes when we're doing something that we're judging, it may be for our greatest good to keep doing it, like a bad habit. So it may be serving us.
Interesting. Well,
Now,
that's the philosophy I'll
yeah,
take with my drinking.
well, it can. Now, also, and there may be a point in your life where you go, uh oh, mm, alcohol may not be serving me like it was anymore. And so we want to listen to that because there can be two sides and multiple sides to alcohol. It can be a comfort and a support, and it could also be a time when we go, oh, this relationship that I've been really close with, this friend, this comfort, this pal, this lover, mm, I'm growing out of this relationship, just like any
Hmm.
kind of relationship. And so we also want to hear that and go, oh, this is turning into a toxic relationship. I really love alcohol. I really do. We've had so much fun together, but I think it may be time for me to leave this relationship because it's turning toxic.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've made this, and I say it a joke, but it's really based on something, and I think that touches on it. I said like I've got like a 3 to 7 year shelf life depending on the person, as far as like relationships, whether it's romantic friendships. We could be best friends,
Mhm.
but after a certain time, not that we won't be friends anymore, but like just we'll see each other a
Yeah,
year, once a year instead of every weekend, kind of thing. And I feel like that's
sure.
most people have that sort of energy that everyone's constantly evolving, right? So
Mhm.
it's natural to, and again, even romantic, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, you could evolve in separate directions where,
Mhm.
I say all the time, my ex-wife and I, uh, y- it was we were maybe good in the beginning, and then we were both children who had children, right? So we evolved in different directions from there, and you know, uh, it's I would say definitely to both of our benefits in hindsight that we divorced and continued. We're still going to be in each other's lives forever because we have two children together.
Mhm.
But being able to evolve where I don't live with you anymore and I don't have to talk to you much.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes we do talk a significant amount, and then we'll go a month where it's what time are you getting the kids, and that's all we'll
Mhm.
say for. So I think that kind of play. I feel like constantly. I don't know if there's a way or a need to measure your evolution as a person, but I think all of those things. I again, and that goes relating it back to alcohol. I always say the first day I wake up with a hangover. I've never had a hangover in my entire life. The first day I wake up with a hangover is the day I say I don't think I'm going to drink anymore.
Mm.
um, because it sounds miserable. I've never, I'm just lucky, I guess, but it sounds awful to
Well,
go. I mean, it ruins your whole next day.
mm,
I can't imagine
and
it.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah. And so we want to be we'll start with the alcohol and then we'll go to the relationship with people. We want to be gentle with ourselves and also open to it is a relationship with a the relationship with the spirit, really, alcohol. It is a close relationship that many of us have or had, and we want to look to see its evolution as well because it has evolved throughout our lives, and just like other relationships that we've had, it's going to evolve. And so there may be a time again where that relationship wants to just change how it looks, Or it may get to the point where, wow, there's something I'm not able to do because I'm friends with alcohol.
Mm.
And it may get to that be that point. And you wanna listen. You wanna go, okay, let me look. Otherwise, uh, it's
Yeah,
gonna
that's
mm,
interesting with the I mean, typically, and this is a discussion I've had with medical professionals even, it's it's the whole most, people who are I think a lot of people do have healthy relationships with alcohol where they drink on occasion, but they don't need to drink all the time. And,
yeah,
they can drink without getting blackout drunk. I think most people are probably like that. But um, in talking to a doctor, most, recovering alcoholics have a um, rock bottom moment
mm, mm,
where they ended up in jail. They did something terrible. They lost a relationship because of something they did or said.
yeah,
um and and this is where the good advice I got on that is, well, you 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 never know if rock bottom's coming. I mean, again, maybe me specifically, maybe it's just something that you're going to be able to do all your life with no real bad side effects, and that's fine. But you don't want to wait until rock bottom to fix the relationship. You want to
yeah,
get it,
yeah,
catch it ahead of time, and that's the fine line that I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to learn to walk that line.
yeah, yeah. And so there's a way of supporting someone around their relationship with alcohol such that what is it that if I'm talking about it, maybe I'm questioning it. So let's look. Let's see if let's actually feel. And we can do this during a constellation in the field. Let me place in myself, my future self without alcohol. Let me feel what this is actually like. And so when you're standing in the shoes of your future self without alcohol, you're going to really experience that moment, and go, wow, my mind is very clear. Wow, I feel like I just feel different. My energy is level. There's a sense of clarity and happiness and peace. I see the relationships around me are shifting. My relationship with my kids is different too. You're going to be able to actually like integrate and channel that information of what that's like. So that's one way of supporting somebody who's curious thinking. Now, the other part of that is, what's my soul asking right now? So if I designed my life in some way, if I designed, if I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn this lesson here. I'm going to learn about unconditional love. I'm going to learn about acceptance, whatever I designed here. And I'm questioning my relationship with alcohol. What is my soul? What are the soul messages here? What am I being asked to? What choices am I being asked to make here? And I can also go, wow, I just stood in great grandfather's shoes and experienced him as an alcoholic and him not dealing with his pain and trauma. Wow, that just gave me some perspective. Let me go back to this day, this present moment. What pain am I not dealing with myself? Whew, that made me very present to my pain. All right, let me look. What's going on here? And so these are all tools for us. Okay. These are all tools. Now, with the alcohol, first let's look and see if that's related to something in the past that I'm drinking a lot because it's in my family system. So there may be layers to it. And that, completing on those layers, healing those layers may take off a lot. So there's multifaceted. So let's go to over to the relationships with another person and how relationships evolve over time and being open to that evolution. So as humans, as life, there is this birth and death cycle, and so relationships evolve in that way. Relationships with our work, um, relationships with humans, relationships evolve in that way. And so it's good to step back and see the cycle and allow the cycle, and relationships may evolve over time because I my soul is growing. So I may not be growing on the same exponential path speed as that person that I was in the relationship with, and that's why we're parting. Or maybe our lessons together are complete. I chose this lifetime, and I maybe chose some people who we signed up for these same lessons with, and we're done with those lessons. It's good to be able to see that so we can complete and honor. So I have some past relationships where I can go, thank you. Instead of being sad and angry at that person where you did that, thank you for teaching me that. Oh my God, for supporting me in that. I'm gonna take that fully. That lives right here with me. I'm always gonna be in relation to you. Always. So all of our past partners, we're always still in relation with them. I want to keep that relationship, even though there's distance and I don't talk to that person. I want to keep keep them in my heart here. So I'm giving back what no longer serves me, letting go of entanglements, anything that's not mine. Did I take that on? Is that oh, that thought's not mine? I give that back to you with love. That's yours. So I'm taking the good and I'm letting those relationships evolve.
Gotcha. There's a lot to dig into here. Um, but since we have a time limit, I'll shift slightly, but staying on topic. Now, how did you discover the morphic field? How did you personally get into this?
Yeah, good question. So, in my family system, I was actually going through a divorce. Well, no, before the divorce, I was going to marriage counseling, and I was experiencing some family issues. This was in my late 20s, early 30s. But I was experiencing in my relationship, and my marriage counselor at the time was a family constellations facilitator. So I can still hear her say, Megan, you're open to this. And so she started teaching me, showing me constellation work during our one-on-one therapy session. And so we were doing we were doing marriage counseling, and also she was really showing me the field and allowing me to she was teaching me, she was giving me the tools. When I began to see, oh wow, in my family, my own trauma that I was carrying, my own wow, this pattern keeps happening, these struggles, these strange circumstances, and like that went from you know, in my relationships, in my addictions, in my like legal issues, patterns that I could see generations back. So when I first went to a workshop of hers, I was just floored because I had been seeing these family dynamics my whole life. I was a young girl who, you know, felt everything and didn't understand why, mom and dad were fighting, and why my siblings were like, I just saw everything and I was like, well, why can't this be, you know, this is all entangled and this is all blocked off and messed up, but I didn't know what to do with it. I was just feeling everything. And so as I was doing a lot of transformational work in my 20s, going to a lot of seminars, just learning a lot. Constellation work really put it all together for me. So when I was in the field in a workshop, I saw where, oh my God, all this information that I'd been accessing, now I can do something with it. Now I have a tool to help heal it. For me, it was the day my life shifted. It was like, this is my work. It took a few more years to really dive in again. Sometimes you do the work and then you step away to dive into it, and I didn't realize I was going to facilitate right away. I just knew I was good at seeing it and doing it for myself. But then I heard the calling to facilitate, and went through training, and lot of workshops, a lot of experiencing. Every facilitator is different. I'm a very so I'm trained in traditional family systemic constellations, and I'm also very spiritual. So um, I'm kind of combining the traditional ancestral work with, there's orders of love that um, are built out of family constellation work that, it's a trained modality. It's a trained system. And I'm very much a spiritual, add a spiritual component to the work. And so I offer that to my clients to access to their direct connection to their guides, their spirit team, their divinity, if you will. So that's the long story of, how did I first connect to the field, the healing field, the morphic field.
Does when you have clients, and I my assumption is, well, no, I guess I should ask you the process in general. Um, do you have people who just can't connect because they're not maybe open to it? That being said, it would seem dumb that someone would come to you and then not be open to it. But I mean, it's not like you're involuntarily grabbing people off the street and saying, "Here, sit down. We're going to do something."
Right. Yeah, that wouldn't really happen because of how you said it. I mean, what I will add is I'm very I operate under for your greatest good. And I meet you where you are, and I believe in your choice, and I believe in your own personal evolution. And so when, I may see, you know, many steps ahead. I may see you in your absolute magnificent greatness, and I also honor that this is your journey, and it may be for your greatest good to experience this right now. And so what may be helpful for you is, for during our constellation, for you to tune into that own truth, your own truth of, oh wow, it's for my greatest good to experience this right now. It's not exactly what I want, what I think I want, but wow, that is for my greatest good to experience this right now. And I see where I'm going. I see where I'm going. I'm holding space for myself to take steps forward on my soul path. So when we when we also access during a constellation, so there's the humanness, okay? Our experience here is human. When we also access the soul layers, levels, dimensions, we get additional information support. And so that means that we'll get clarity around, oh, wow, I had it my whole life that me being this way was a bad thing that I had to hide. And then when we tune into at the soul level, like why that happened, why we experienced that, why we're this way, we go, oh my god, I didn't even see that. But because I was this way, because I experienced myself as something that I didn't like, or something that was a big hindrance to me, that I try it, it is the exact reason why I'm able to experience myself in my greatness. Like, that trauma right there allowed me to experience my the best version of myself. And if I hadn't, and so when we receive those soul messages, and the whys, the WHY behind why we experience certain things in life, we get clear clarity when we get we get this freedom on the soul level of, okay, I get life a little bit more. We get peace. We go, okay, I kind of see how this whole thing works here. And there's a human experience here. And there's also, there's a lot happening that on the soul level that maybe I can just open up and tap into a little bit more. Because 99.999% of what we're experiencing here is at that soul level. It's all happening around us all the time. We're accessing it through the field. So let's bring a little bit for our greatest good, a little bit more of awareness so that we can just kind of chillax here a bit and enjoy this experience a little bit more.
Uh, I guess that's a good note to wrap up on. But again, Megan, could you tell my audience just one more time where to find you and any last words?
Absolutely. So the website's themorphicfield.com. So it's the Morphic is Morphic field, Field. Did I spell that right? Field.com. On my website, there's all sorts of information about me, individual sessions, there's group workshops. I do have a free 15-minute call link right up there right now that people can access as well. I also have videos on YouTube. So these are good starter videos for people who just want to tap in, see if this work is resonating with them, and they will go through an exercise. So I'm actually tuning people into the field during these videos, so 5-minute videos up to 30-minute videos where they're actually receiving healing. So they're able to release, they're able to receive through the morphic field through these videos. So these are powerful videos and just a taste, a small snippet of the work that we can do together one on one as well. So YouTube, search themorphicfield.com. There's also a link to YouTube through my website as well.
Perfect. Everyone should check that out, and I'll have the links in the show description, depending on how and where you're watching this. Megan, thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome.
Jeff, thank you. I am honored. Thank you so much. You're in your listening. I'm able to speak freely and to a depth that I really hope that many people met us where they are and are able to receive. And again, healing, transformation, receive sparking of their divinity, something.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And to the viewer, thank you for watching. Scratch my noodle. Hope you come back for more episodes in the future. Or if you're, binge watching this, I'll see you again in a few seconds.